Hey everybody, welcome back to the garage, and it is that time of year where we have to get the truck ready for the bureaucratic nightmare that is known as the state inspection. Excuse me while I get on a little bit of a rant here while the government finds another way to tax us over something that they absolutely have no clue about, and they want to punish us people that like to modify our vehicles because they think that they don't run within some emission standard that they don't understand in the first place. Listen, I don't have a soapbox down here to stand on. I'm just saying it's kind of a crock, and I now live in a state that requires it yearly. So you guys down in Oklahoma, count your blessings that you don't have to go through this crap. You know, I'm all for emissions, but you're sitting here telling me that choking an engine off with a catalytic converter is more efficient than just actually having a properly tuned vehicle? I don't think so. But neither here nor there, we have to get the Superado ready for emissions testing. And honestly, it's exempt this year because if it's, I think, 3,000 miles or less in a year, you don't have to go through, but you still have to go through the process. You still have to pay the taxes, basically. You have to pay, and the biggest pain in the ass about this whole situation is there's a set schedule of fees that these people are allowed to charge for basically jacking it up, making sure that your tires aren't bald and that your brake pads aren't worn down. So, I don't know. I would love to see some kind of statistical figure that says this is how many accidents it, keeps from happening every year by going through this process, this hassle as it were. But we got to play ball. It is what it is, so we're going to go through the process. That means in this situation we need to dial the boost back because they drive the vehicle. Do they drive the vehicle anywhere else whenever they do that? I mean, probably in California. You guys really have it bad out there. But they do drive the vehicle running 13 psi. This thing, if you go wide open throttle, it has a tendency to get into limp mode because I have not dialed in the top end perfectly. But I also don't want somebody driving around with a 600 horsepower pickup truck, so I'm going to dial this thing back down to maybe 450 or so. In the process, though, I need to go through and try and see if I can't get the intercooler back in the mix because the IATs are a little bit high. So, what is on the docket for today? Let's jerk the front end of the truck off. Let's see if we can mount the intercooler in front of the radiator, actually have a front mount as opposed to a bottom mount. We'll do a pulley swap on it. We're going to do some intake ducting. We're putting the MAF sensor back in. Probably going to run it on MAF only for this inspection that I've got to get done this month. And then, we're going to take the methanol back down to 1,000 cc's from 2,000 cc's because I'm not planning on going back to running 13 psi on it. I think I'm going to stick with, I don't know, 10 at the most, 8. I'm trying to make this thing reasonable. I don't want to end up blowing something up on this truck. You know, the idea behind it is the truck needs to last, but hopefully, as I said here soon, we can get a 4th generation platform vehicle in here and we can actually turn that up to 11. Oh, by the way, if you like my cool shirt, shout out to TJ for that. You may have, if you were down at Cletus and Cars in Houston, you may have seen him and his boys rocking some of these out. He had them made so he could represent the channel out there. I appreciate the support and getting more exposure in front of a bunch of fans like that. So you guys are driving the channel. You know, I'm just here collating the information and putting it on the web out there. So, said little different today. We're working on the truck, so stick around. Let's see what we can get done and go from there. Okay, change of plans. After looking at the front of the truck, a lot of cutting would have to be done in order to front mount the intercooler. So I'm going to go back to putting it underneath. Seemed to work decent. I might throw a lip on the intercooler, just kind of an air scoop thing to help direct some air into it. I don't know. Honestly, I don't want to get that far off into the woods, but let's jump over and take a look at it here. Okay. So on the passenger side, we're not too bad. There's some room over there. This bracket would have to go here in the middle. Not a big ordeal. It's just a support for the grill. But on the driver's side, it gets a little tight because the intake's right behind there for the radiator. You would have to come through here, cut this up, then basically there's a metal bracket in there that would have to be cut up, and then you would have to relocate the horn most likely, and possibly the windshield washer tank. So as you can see, it is just a mess of crap down in there. I don't feel like doing that much just to do inspection. Over here it's not as bad, other than I've got my catch can there, and you've got the lines for your condenser, your air conditioner system. So it's still kind of a mess on both sides. So that being said, you can see down here the brackets where I had the intercooler mounted underneath at an angle. I'll have to find the rear brackets. Oh, they're still on there. Yeah, well, that'll make that part easy. I left all the brackets on whenever I dropped it last time, so we're going to go back to the way it was. And as I said, I might throw something on the intercooler to help direct some air in. The Pro Charger setup that uses the bottom mount intercooler has a rubber flap that hangs down from the bottom of the intercooler to help direct air through it. I might kind of replicate something like that. Well, I've already got my argon and my spool gun hooked up to the welder, so I figured what the hey. I'm going to go ahead. I got a couple pieces of aluminum here. I'm just going to hit them in a couple spots down to the bottom side of this plate. Man, this thing is beat up on the other side, but I think we're still good. Shouldn't have any leaks on any of it. Nonetheless, I'm going to hit a couple spots down here, mount these two pieces of aluminum, or weld these two pieces of aluminum on, and then that way, if I want to later on, I can come in, drill some holes in this, and get a piece of rubber, and just throw a little rubber flap on the bottom of this to help direct air into it. So. Okay, here is, this is what a good weld looks like with a spool gun. You see I got about 3 inches of good weld and a bunch of booger welds. Spool guns are a pain in the butt to weld with, so, but it's not going anywhere. That's for dang sure. So, you know, function over beauty, whatever they call it. I'm not too worried about it looking good. It's going to be underneath the truck. But yeah, I think maybe the garage needs to invest in a TIG welder. What do you guys think? Oh well. We're gonna let that cool off, and then we will jump underneath the truck, get the thing mounted back in place, and start running the intercooler piping. Okay, now that we've got the blower off, we're going to have to reclock this. This position is good for coming up and over, but to get the undermount intercooler, the inducer needs to be rotated and pointed down, and then we'll go out into a 90 and over to the intercooler. In order to reclock a Pro Charger, it's pretty straightforward. You have these brackets and Allen head bolts with washers on them. You basically are going to have to take all these off because they go back in dependent on where your drain plugs are and where the rest of the housing is. So go ahead and just take all those off, rotate it to where it needs to be, and then get your large brackets opposite of each other, and then use your washer style to fill in the gaps in between. So straightforward. Let's get her knocked out. Okay, well, we kind of ran out of time today, but we got 99% of what I wanted to get done. Got the intercooler mounted back underneath. I went in and welded up the pipes in multiple spots, so there is a outlet coupler that goes down. There's a single pipe coming off the discharge of the supercharger with the blow-off valve that goes directly into the intercooler, so that's one piece. Then coming out of the intercooler is one piece up until this elbow. So I have reduced the amount of couplers on this setup by quite a bit. So that'll help with, you know, possible boost leaks, things like that. This needs to be done a little bit different, but as I said, I was running short on time. I got to go eat with Mrs. Garage here in a bit. So we kind of got wrapped up. I also did not get around to swapping out the pulley, not a big ordeal. But for now, what I'm going to do is, I did step down just to one meth nozzle. So instead of 2,000 cc's, we're back down to 1,000 cc's, which should be fine for now. But I'm going to go ahead and pull the as found out of the ECM, re-enable the MAF sensor, and I'll probably for now just go ahead and run it on MAF only. The tubing size is the same as beforehand, so the curve that's in there should be good to go until I can get around to tune it properly. And so I'll do a video on tuning it as a follow-up to this one. But that's basically it. So remember, ABT, always be tuning, and I want to say thank you for stopping by the garage.